So welcome to this video on N8N, which is a powerful workflow automation tool which is pretty inexpensive that you can deploy yourself and you can use it to level up your no-code applications. So of course, with no-code applications, primarily they are pretty good. They look visually attractive. They do some talking to the database and all that kind of stuff, but there is only so much that your front-end no-code application can do. No doubt at some point you're going to want to integrate these with some more services on the internet. So this is what N8N is fantastic for, as well as doing so much more than that. And of course, we're going to look at that in this particular video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a bit of a brief introduction to why you would use something like N8N to support your no-code application. We're then going to get the thing installed. There's some options on the table, but I'm going to go through a self-hosted option for you, which is pretty inexpensive to get something so powerful as this to get up and running. And then I'm going to use FlutterFlow to have a basic example where we're actually going to fire a message out to one of the to the automation that we're going to create, and that's going to write a message to a Telegram chat channel just to check to make sure this thing is up and running. So there we go. That's a bit of an introduction. Let's get into the video and let's start learning a little bit more about why we would use N8N to empower our applications. Let's get cracking. So as I said just a minute ago, most no-code front-end applications are just not enough. They may look visually attractive, they may do some writing to the database and all that kind of stuff, but at some point you're likely going to want to integrate your application with a whole host of other services. Or, for example, you might want to actually do some calculations, or you might want to sort of branch out to something else to do something for you that could then be returned back to your no-code application. So the use cases are absolutely endless, of course. So of course, just as a little example then, okay, let's, for example, think about this. Okay, let's say, for example, that a new user registers in your application. We write those details to the database, and then what we might want to do is we might then want to send an email to that user or to yourself that that account has successfully been created, and give them a little bit of intro or something like that and welcome them to your platform. This is a great example where N8N can be used. And of course, there's other examples as well. Okay, so for example, it might be that actually you have an application that needs to make some decisions. Okay, so for example, you might, inside the front end application, you might have a series of checkboxes that you submit, and maybe a form of some kind. Of course, then you're going to need to make a decision. It might be that actually there may be a route into a particular type of user or a group of users in an organization. For example, it could be that user A will take receipt of particular forms that's for them, or user B would get particular forms for them as well. So of course, N8N is a great example where that can be used as well. So just one little final example as well is, say for example, on your application that somebody hits a buy button, you need to make some logical checks. You need to make sure that that user can actually buy these particular tokens, or they might be able to buy a certificate or an e-ticket or something like that. Of course, you need to make some kind of decision whether they can actually do that or not. So of course, you can then branch out. You can actually say, no, I'm sorry. You can respond back to your no-code application, say, sorry, you're not eligible for that particular purchase. Or you might want to confirm that actually, yes, that purchase is good, and that purchase can then happen, of course. So they're all the sort of things that you might want to do using a workflow tool like this. Okay, so there's just a couple of little examples there that I've put together. But of course, it can go on forever. There is so much more that you can do. So why use N8N then for no code? So it's an open source tool that is available to you. Okay, there is some cloud hosted solutions available to you, but actually we're going to be using the community edition, and we're going to get that installed. So it's like a self-hosted solution. Okay, so it's going to cost you very, very little to get up and running with this particular tool. The way I can describe it is it's kind of like a visual sort of programming approach. Okay, so it's all very nice on the UI. You can drag and drop all of these these blocks. They're called nodes within inside N8N, but you can kind of join all of these things together, and that pretty well much is your workflow. You'll always go from start to finish. In fact, there's a little picture there at the bottom there, which actually describes it shows you kind of what it looks like. You actually hook all these things together, and of course you can integrate this and automate processes between various applications and services. users, and I go on and I say on here that actually there's popular tools and database and cloud service available. Of course, you want to send emails, or you want to hook into other APIs like weather APIs and all that kind of stuff. Even Chat GPT as well, if you want to call out to the open services as well by passing the API key, you can kind of do some stuff with Chat GPT and then send responses back to your users inside your no-code tool. All of that is there. It's got so much available, and it's got a great community behind it as well, which are creating all of these types of integrations, which is fantastic. So yes, it has a user-friendly interface, and I think it makes it accessible to a wide range of users. And of course, you don't have to be a deep dive programmer to understand it. Of course, it's quite useful if you do have some kind of understanding in your mind about kind of some basic sort of programming concepts. But I think the more you use it, the more you learn about it, the more you go and look out to the community and look at various videos on the internet stuff, it should become quite clear. And of course, I'll cover this a lot more on the channel as well as time goes on. And of course, if you do want to get into the nuts and bolts, if you do want to get a little bit deep dive and you're quite happy to do a bit of JavaScript coding, then it's got a very, very powerful JavaScript editor as well. So you can kind of get into the weeds there and really open up some options for you. And the good thing is it can be a low cost initially. Of course, you can get this thing up and running really, really quite inexpensively. But of course, as your application grows, as your user base grows within your application, then of course, the use of N8N will kind of go up. But of course, the good thing about that is you can just keep a tab of that and just make sure you keep everything in budget as your application grows. So let's have a look at some of the options then with N8N just very, very quickly. So they've got this cloud hosted version, which has a free trial available. So of course, if you just wanted to try this out for 7 days, you can do that. Just make sure that if you're not interested after 7 days that you get that closed down. Otherwise your card will be charged. You will need to put your credit card in order to try the trial. But certainly if you want to jump in there right away, then definitely have a look at the cloud hosted solution. The own hosting option is really, of course, if you work for an organization, of course, that won't cost you nothing. Get it installed on their servers and you're good to go. But we're going to look at the self-hosting solution, which is low cost. We are going to use an online kind of service called Railway, which is going to allow us to get this thing installed really, really easily. Yes, it's going to cost us a few pounds to kind of get up and running, or a few dollars, but it's well worth doing it in order to explore the platform. And of course, if you no longer need it, you can delete it and it won't really cost you anything more than that. So we're going to use Railway to kind of get this up and running. So let's just have a look at that then in depth. Okay, so what you're going to need, okay, so in order to get started, okay, you're going to need to use, as I said, Railway as a deployment platform. So this is going to allow you to kind of provision and deploy N8N to the actual cloud itself. So the idea is then that will then give you the tool up and running, and then of course you'll be able to then design and execute your N8N workflows from your no-code applications. Okay, so the only other thing you're going to need is a GitHub account. If you haven't got a GitHub account, please do go and create one. I'll talk you through the process within inside the video briefly, but you are going to need a free account there, and that's really just allows you to then get that N8N template installed inside GitHub, which then Railway can then use in order to get it up and running. And as I said here, you need a small amount of dollars to get started. You'll see very, very shortly that I'll just sort of prepay a few dollars there, really, just to get the system up and running, which will allow me to use it for all of this sort of training, and actually, to be fair, to be used for a reasonable amount of time as well with any of the applications that I build as well. So it's really, really inexpensive. And what I'll do is, as always in all of my videos across my channel, I'll try to do this in a beginner style. Okay, I do like to walk through the process from start to finish and try not to skip over too much detail there. So hopefully you'll find this walkthrough really easily. So so that's pretty much it. So as to really mention, I'm not affiliated with Railway or N8N or anything like that, of course. But when you do want to use these systems and you really are happy, then please do use the links in the description as well, because they are affiliate links, of course, and any revenue that I generate from any of those affiliate links go straight back in to creating these videos on my channel as well. So it really does obviously help me out as well. So that's the introduction. I know I rabbled on a little bit, so let's now start getting into the meat of the actual video itself, where we're going to now start focusing on getting N8N set up. So without further ado, let's move on to the next section. So of course in this particular video we're going to focus on the self-hosted version of NAN, but if you didn't want to install the self-hosted version, then head over to nan.io, hit the get started option up there at the top right, and of course at that point you can then actually sign up for one of their free trials. Now it's only 7 days at the time of recording, and you will need to put in your card details for payment, but they won't take the money until 7 days. So just make sure that if you no longer want to use the service, that you make sure that you then close it down before those 7 days have elapsed. If you head over to the price, you can see here that the pricing is £20 per month here on the starter plan. That should be more than sufficient for most kind of sort of entry level sort of projects, but of course it then does ramp up to the pro, which obviously costs a lot more money. Here I'm in the UK, so it's in pounds, but of course dollars will be a little bit more than that on screen. So pretty well much that's where we're at. Now we're going to focus on the self-hosted version, so let's head into the next section on getting that all set up. So get started then on this N8N journey. The first thing that you're going to want to do is create yourself a GitHub account. Of course, if you've already got one, then great, that's perfect. But if you haven't got one, then please do head over to github.com and get yourself an account created. So just quite simply, just go through the sign up process and make sure you keep hold of your credentials because they're going to be needed very, very shortly. So let's now move on to setting up your Railway project. So here we are then on the Railway.app sort of homepage. Of course, please do click on the links in the description if you would like to support the channel. Of course, any kind of affiliate sort of contributions that get made on this channel all go into making more videos. So it really does help the channel out, of course. Now here we are on the homepage. Now we need to now start a brand new project. So we know that we've got our GitHub account created, so we can now crack on. So let's move over and say where it says start new project, hit that, and we are going to deploy a template. So the fantastic folk in the community have created an NAN template. This is going to allow us to get up and running with this project really, really quickly. So just on the here on the deploy template, do a search for NAN, but you can see here that it's the second one that's on the list here. So just choose NAN, and of course this is where it's now going to ask me now to log in with GitHub. So let's just hit the log in with GitHub option. And here I am now. I've already now got a GitHub account, and of course this is where you need to put your credentials in for your account, of course. So go ahead and do that, hit the sign in, and then of course now it's going to come up and ask me about some permissions. So we're going to need to link the Railway website through to our GitHub account. So I'm just going to hit the authorize here. That is all good. And here it's now coming up about deploying NAN. We now need to do some configuration. So just hit the configure option. So of course now what it's asking for is it's now hooking back up into GitHub, and it's saying, look, do I want to access all of the repositories that will be within inside my GitHub account or selected ones? Now I don't have a huge amount of repositories in this because it's kind of my training account, so I'm just going to say all repositories because of course in future sort of editions of videos I'm going to be covering a lot more of NAN on the channel. So I'm just going to say all repositories. If you just created your GitHub account, then feel free to choose all repositories, or you can select ones that already exist. Now, of course, if you do select one that already exists, or you would like to create one, you're going to need to go to GitHub and actually create a repository for the template project to be installed. But I'm just going to say all repositories because it makes it super simple. Hit on install and authorize. And that is good. So now what it's doing now is it's now going to come up with some kind of recommended sort of settings. This is my GitHub. It's got an N8N sort of repository that's going to get created with inside my GitHub account. This is all good for me. I'm going to keep this as default. I'm going to hit the deploy option. Okay, so our template has now been installed, but our application will not be up and running. This is where we now need to ramp up the services on the Railway platform with getting some money into this system. Okay, so they're going to need, at the moment, I'm kind of on this like limited sort of plan. I need to upgrade my Railway account for this particular project to kind of like a hobby plan. So in order for me to be able to do that, I'm going to need to actually now sort of pay some money to upgrade my account. So let's go and do that now. So I'm just going to head up to the top right here where it says limited trial plan. Just choose that and say view upgrade options here. And you can see here, this is just kind of giving you some ideas here of exactly how much things are going to cost. So as a hobby, you could just choose this particular option if you wanted to commit to a monthly $5 charge. Of course, the issue and something to be obviously aware of is as you use your N8N service more, then it's going to potentially take more resources. Okay, so it could end up costing you more than $5 per month, because of course your $5 is your base kind of fee, and then of course as you use more resources in the actual Railway platform, it could potentially obviously go up as well. So for most kind of starter kind of projects where you're not really using NAN to the full power that you would be using in a kind of quite a busy application, then obviously the cost will remain quite low, of course. But as always, please do keep an eye on the resources and the cost that actually gets used. Now for this particular video, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put my card in here, but I'm going to actually do a prepaid subscription. So just at the bottom here it says prepaid. This is going to allow me to set down a certain amount of money that I know that once I've actually then hit that amount, then my services would then stop. So as I'm just providing this as for the love of the YouTube community, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a $10 charge in here. Okay, so that's what it's going to charge me. And of course I'm now going to go ahead and fill in my card details and hit the purchase credits button. So I'm going to go and do that now. So there we go, the hobby plan has been purchased, and I can now go to the dashboard, hit on go to dashboard, and you can see here that that message has now disappeared, and we have this option here called Rustic Swim, which is just a random name that gets associated with your project. And of course I can just click on this here, and I'm now in a position where we can now make sure this service is up and running. So one of the quickest ways to get your project up and running with inside the Railway architecture is to basically just make a commit with inside your new account that you've created with inside GitHub. So of course I've just gone over to GitHub now, I'm signed in, and if you've been following along in the example so far, you'll see that you'll have an N8N repository. So if you just click on that, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to make a change to this repository, which will hopefully kickstart our application into life with inside the Railway architecture. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply add a file here. I'm going to say create new file, and I'm just going to put some text in here. It can be anything you like. I'm just going to say start, and I'm just going to call this one kickstart. Okay, and I'm going to commit the changes, and I'm just going to say commit there. And that's all that I need to do then. And what will happen now, hopefully, is that with inside the Railway our architecture, our project should kick into life. Let's go over to Railway and have a look now. There we go. I've just done a refresh. You can see here now that with inside our project, you can see that it says that it's actually deploying. So we're just going to give this some time to deploy. And once it's up and running, we'll come back and then we'll see how it fires up. So there we go, things are looking super good for us. You can see here we've got like this green background here, and it looks like our application is up and running. So everything is so far gone really well. We're now ready to now access our actual application that we've deployed. Okay, so we can just highlight on the URL, just hit that, and then we'll be taken off then to the N8N, the kind of like ownership account creation screen. So of course I'm just going to fill these details in now, and these are going to become the administrator details for my account. So let me do that now. So I filled those details in. Let's hit the next option. That's looking good. Let me just close that down. So now we're just going to fill some basic details in. Let me clear this. Excellent. So if you see this particular screen, we are right now up and running within our application that we've deployed, and we can now then move on to the next step and just do some tests here to make sure that everything is up and running for us as we expect it to be on our new deployment. So before we commence any further, we need to make a couple of configuration changes to the N8N instance that we've actually got here. We're going to need to pass in some configuration items so N8N will operate correctly for us. Okay, so there's a couple of things that we need to do. The first thing that we need to do is actually put a host variable in there. Okay, so just move over to deployments to variables. We need to add one in, and we need to tell N8N exactly where the actual URL of our application is actually running. So this is the actual website address. So we've already been there already. So I'm just going to type in N8N and then underscore host. And then the value that I'm going to put in here, I'm just going to paste this in here, is the URL of our application. Now it's super, super important that you do not include https:// and you don't want to put any slashes or anything after .app. Okay, so N8N will actually prepend and append any values that it needs on that URL. So just once you put that in there, just hit add. And then the other variable that we need to actually put in here is we need to actually tell N8N to actually operate off of HTTPS, so it's secure instead of HTTP. So I'm just going to do that now. You can see here that it's actually redeploying automatically for us as I'm making these changes. So I'm going to add another one in here, just hit new variable, and this is going to be called N8N underscore protocol like that. And the value you're just going to put in here is just simply HTTPS, because by default NAN will actually just be HTTP. Hit the add there, and that is all that we need to do. So it's now going to do a redeployment for us. This will take just a few moments, of course, and once it's actually up and running, you probably need to wait. You'll see here when you go to deployments here that it's kind of like it will kick start in just a second. There it goes, it says building. So you're probably going to have to wait, probably once it's actually gone green, probably about 10 to 15 seconds for the actual application to be readily available on the web. And then of course you can just do a refresh, log back in, and then we should see those changes in place. There it is, it's gone green for us. So I can now head back over to the login page. So of course if you're signed in, just hit a refresh and you'll be back into the sign in page. Hit the sign in, and then that should go in for us. There we go. This is why you need to give it just a few moments for it to settle down. Hit the start from scratch, and I'm just going to go up to the little plus here. I know we haven't done this yet, but I'm just going to make sure our configuration has taken place. So I'm just going to type in webhook. This is a common trigger that we might want to call into our workflow, where what will happen is, well, actually from any of our applications, whether it's your no-code tool or anything like that, you can make a call actually into this particular URL, which will then kick a particular workflow into life. Okay, more on that soon, but you can see here that this is looking good for us. If I click on the production URL, you can see here that it says https:// We know that we got the S there, so we know that we're running secure now, which is great. There is our NAN kind of URL with the port on there. Don't worry too much about that. And then of course everything else after it is then going to be specific to this particular webhook. So ideally, once all of this is kind of set up, when we access that URL, then we can trigger our workflow into life. So that's all looking good. Okay, so now that we've got NAN all nicely configured with the inside Railway, I've got a very, very simple client-side application here written in FlutterFlow, which I've put together. Very, very simple. What it's going to do is just a simple screen that's going to take a message. I'm going to hit the submit button. It's going to invoke the workflow within NAN. It's going to take the message and it's going to write it to a simple Telegram group that I've created. And I've got a full example coming on my channel soon on how to use NAN with Telegram. But just to test to make sure workflow is working, let's give this set up a quick whirl with inside NAN, and let's quickly build that now. So here I am back in NAN. I'm on the workflow screen. I'm going to hit the start from scratch option here, and here we are. We're going to add the very, very first step to our workflow. So what I need to do is I need to take request from FlutterFlow, and I then need to pick up the message that I'm going to pass in via the URL query string. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is add a first step, hit the little plus there, and I'm going to do a search for the term webhook. Okay, so it's going to be a web execution. It's going to be a call to a website address that's going to invoke this particular workflow. So I'm going to keep this one pretty well much as it is. I'm just going to make some changes on here, and I'm going to call this one send message. Okay, so this is going to form part of the URL that I'm actually calling into NAN. Everything else pretty well much stays the same. Actually, it's just going to be get request. That's pretty good. And you can see up here that if I just click away, hopefully that should change. There it is. We've now got a test URL and we've got a production URL. So I'm just going to use the test URL for just a moment to actually, we're going to make a call into this particular workflow. That's then on the left hand side going to allow us to capture the details of the request that's coming in, and then we can actually then use those details to then do some further work on as we work through the actual workflow. Okay, so now that's nicely set up. Let's now, what we're going to do, we're going to take this URL here and we're actually going to make some changes to it and into another tab with inside Chrome, and that will allow us to then be able to listen for those changes. So let's just select that, and it's now going to copy the URL to the clipboard. I'm going to listen for the test event, so just hit that. So it's now in a listening mode here. So if I bring up another tab, and I'm just going to paste that actual message, so the URL that I've copied into the URL of the browser, and I'm just going to make a slight little change. I'm going to put a question mark, and I'm going to say message equals, and I'm going to say this is a test message. Just going to hit the enter button, and you're going to see now that it's going to come up and say the workflow was started. Okay, so something's actually happened with inside NAN. If I now go back to that, you can now see that what's happened is that on the right hand side we can see the output. This is what's actually arrived into the workflow. So this is great. You can see here that this is just a load of header information from the request. We're not passing any params in, but you can see the query that we're passing. Okay, so this is what we passed in on the query string. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press on the little pin option up here. So I'm going to just select that, and that's now pinned now. So the data is now available to us with inside the workflow. That's great. So I can go back here, and now we've got the webhook now set up. We now need to add the next item in the workflow itself. So just hit the little plus here. And I'm going to do a search for Telegram. Okay, and I'm going to choose a Telegram here, and I'm going to want to actually send a message. So if I just do a search here for send text message, there it is. So just choose the send text message option, and now I've come up with this another configuration element for our actual our Telegram sort of node, our kind of the block that we're actually working on here. Okay, now what I've got here is I've already created my credentials to the Telegram sort of API. Okay, so I've already created that. Of course, if you had your own Telegram API set up, you would just create a new credential and just fill those details in. I'm going to spare the information in this particular video for that because I'm going to be doing further videos, of course, but just assume that I've just set up NAN ready to connect to my Telegram account. Okay, so everything else is pretty good. So here we've got a chat ID which I need to incorporate actually within here. Okay, so I'm just going to fill those details in now. So I just filled the information in the chat ID. There's very, very specific to the actual chat group that I've got from my automations. Okay, so I've just put that in there, of course. And then the text I'm going to put in is I'm just going to put this in here, message sent, and then I'm going to put a colon. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move over to the table here, and you can see this is the data that we've actually got coming in. So this is the message. I'm going to pick that up, and I'm just going to drop that actually in here. So I'm going to say message sent, and then of course this is going to pick up the message that we're passing in via the query string. Okay, that's all that we need to do, and I think that is good. So I can just come out of that now. That's great. So that's all set up for us. I'm just going to check the webhook here just to make sure I've got immediately. Yeah, it can respond immediately. That's good. So that's all set up for us. So pretty well much that is our workflow set up. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to double click on the webhook here. I'm going to go to the production URL, and I'm going to make a copy of this. This is what we're going to now need to pass into FlutterFlow, into the API part that which we're then going to then hook our widgets on to actually send that message. I'm just going to copy that to the clipboard, and then in the next bit, let's move over to FlutterFlow and let's get all of that set up, and then we'll come back here, we'll get this up and running, and then we're ready to test the application. So here we are then back in FlutterFlow. Let's move over to the API calls section on the left hand side. Let's hit the add up here, and we're just going to create a very, very simple API call. And I'm just going to give this one a name. So I'm going to call this one send message, like that. With inside the URL, I'm just going to paste that URL that I've just copied from my NAN instance that I've got there. So you can see here, this is the webhook and the send message. And of course, now we just need to set up some various details that we're now going to then pass into our API. We're going to set a variable up, say add variable, and I'm going to call this one message. And it's going to be of a type string. So of course, this is the variable that I'm going to hook onto with inside FlutterFlow itself. Then I'm going to select the query parameters, hit the add query parameter. And if you remember, this one was called message. This is what we're going to kind of tack onto the end of our URL here. It's going to be from variable type, and we're going to select the variable that we just created with inside the variables tab. Just choose that, and then that's perfect. That's all that we actually need to do to set this up. We can add the call, and then we can hit save, and we should be all ready to go now with inside FlutterFlow. So let's move over to FlutterFlow itself. Let's click on the submit button. Like I said, I've got no other logic here or anything like that. It's a really, really straightforward, simple page. This really just got a couple of widgets on for more styling. So let's now go over to the actions here. Let's open up the action flow editor, hit the add action, and the first action that we're going to want to make is just quite simply the API call. So just choose API call, and then the name that we need to select is going to be send message. And then of course we're going to want to pass in some variables now, so just choose the set additional variable, and of course we need to set the message, and the message is going to come from the actual text field that we've actually got on the UI. So just go to widget state, choose the message text field option, and that is all that we need to do. Now of course I'm not really worried about what we're doing down here. We're just going to assume this is all going to work for us, and it's all good. In fact, I think what we probably need to do is probably actually put an actual message in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually choose the add action, and I'm just going to say show, actually in fact let's do the snack bar. Let's show the snack bar here, and we're just going to say message sent. There we go. We need to give it a value of inside there. That's all we need to do. Just hit close down. So that's good. So let's now go back into N8N. Let's make sure our workflow is all active, and then we should be able to then run this up in FlutterFlow, and we can then test it out. Let's give it a whirl. So here we are then back in N8N. It's really, really simple. We just need to go back to the back to canvas option here. That's good for us. We can just click on this little option up here called where it says inactive. Let's just toggle that to be on, and we say got it here. Everything is saved for us, and we probably want to give our workflow a name actually. So we're just going to say send message from FlutterFlow to Telegram. Let's just keep it as a nice easy name, and that's good. And of course, if you click back on workflows there, you can see that our workflow is there and it's all up and running, so that should be good for us. Now I've got a Telegram channel that's ready to take receipt of a message. Let's now move back over to the test mode of FlutterFlow, and let's see if that message lands within inside Telegram itself. So here we go then. On the left hand side I've got the application running in test mode, and on the right hand side I've got this very, very simple Telegram channel that is now waiting for receipt for a message. So I'm just going to say in here, the message I'm going to send is hello, let's put in here no code community, like that. If I hit the submit button, hopefully we should see the message appear on the right hand side in Telegram. There we go. Excellent. There it is. There is our message in Telegram. So there we go. Straight from FlutterFlow, straight from Telegram via a workflow. And we can go back into N8N, of course, and we can then go to the actual executions. We go down to where it says all executions, and you can see here, send message from FlutterFlow. This is the one that I've just sent. Now it's succeeded. And of course, we can view obviously the workflow. We can view some details about it and all this kind of stuff. So brilliant. That just proves that everything is working for us. And of course, please do remember, obviously in the future, there'll be so much more of N8N covered on the channel, because it's a fantastic tool for no-code developers. And of course, I'm going to cover more great examples of working with FlutterFlow as well, because that is my #1 no-code tool. But of course, you can use any no-code backend with N8N. So there you go. Hope you found this video useful on N8N. It's certainly getting a lot of attention on the internet. Really, really pleased to cover it on my channel as well. And of course, I'll be using this in lots of further examples on my channel. So please do stick around for that. Please do like the video, of course, and please do subscribe to the channel if you love all of these type of walkthrough videos. I'm covering a lot more no-code stuff now, so I'm sure there's some content there on my channel. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.